Golden State Killer, also known as the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker, including his crimes and eventual capture through DNA evidence. The true story of the Golden State Killer. For more than a decade, from the mid-1970s to the mid-1980s, California was haunted by a mysterious and brutal predator. Known by many names, the East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker, and later the Golden State Killer, he committed a string of burglaries, rapes, and murders that terrorized entire communities. His true identity remained a mystery for over 40 years, until the advent of modern DNA technology finally unmasked him as Joseph James DeAngelo. Early crimes, the Visalia Ransacker. The story begins in Visalia, California, where a series of more than 100 break-ins baffled police. The culprit, dubbed the Visalia Ransacker, burglarized homes, often stealing personal items of little value, jewelry, photos, or sentimental trinkets. He also engaged in disturbing behaviors, moving objects around, scattering women's underwear, and taking mementos. In September 1975, the crimes escalated when Claude Snelling, a college professor, was shot and killed trying to stop the abduction of his daughter. Soon after, the ransacker disappeared, but the terror had only just begun. The East Area Rapist. By mid-1976, a new wave of attacks began around Sacramento County, California. The assailant broke into homes at night, often targeting couples or single women. He wore a ski mask, tied his victims with ligatures, and threatened them with weapons. His attacks were methodical. He would sometimes stalk his victims for weeks, learning their routines, and even make harassing phone calls before or after assaults. Victims described a chilling figure who seemed to take pleasure in psychological control, whispering threats, crying, and sometimes calling out, "I'll kill them." Over 50 rapes were linked to the East Area Rapist, primarily in the Sacramento, Contra Costa, and San Joaquin counties. He often escaped through canals and bike trails, disappearing without a trace. The original Night Stalker. By the late 1970s, the attacks suddenly shifted south to Southern California. Now, the crimes became more violent and fatal. The assailant began murdering couples in their homes, typically bludgeoning or shooting them after binding them in the same distinctive style as the East Area Rapist. These murders, which occurred in Santa Barbara, Ventura, Orange, and Los Angeles counties, would later be connected by DNA evidence. The killer was dubbed the original Night Stalker, a name coined later to distinguish him from Richard Ramirez, the later Night Stalker. By 1986, his known murder spree ended with the brutal killing of Janelle Cruz, an 18-year-old from Irvine. Then, the trail went cold. The investigation and the birth of a name. For decades, detectives and amateur sleuths pursued leads with no success. In 2013, writer and true crime journalist Michelle McNamara reignited public interest through her book project, later published posthumously as I'll Be Gone in the Dark. McNamara coined the term Golden State Killer, a name that brought together all his crimes under one identity. Her work inspired a new generation of investigators and raised public awareness at a time when DNA technology was advancing rapidly. The breakthrough, DNA and Genetic Genealogy, 2018. In April 2018, after more than 40 years of mystery, investigators made a groundbreaking discovery. Using genetic genealogy, a new technique that compares crime scene DNA to profiles uploaded to public genealogy databases like GEDmatch, detectives traced the killer's family line. The DNA led them to Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer who had served in Exeter and Auburn, California, areas near many of the early attacks. DeAngelo had been fired from the police force in 1979 for shoplifting dog repellent and a hammer, oddly similar to tools used in the crimes. After covertly collecting DNA from an item he discarded, investigators confirmed a match to the Golden State Killer's DNA. On April 24, 2018, DeAngelo was arrested at his home in Citrus Heights, California. Joseph James DeAngelo, the man behind the mask. Born November 8, 1945, DeAngelo had served in the Navy during the Vietnam War and later earned a degree in criminal justice. Friends and family described him as moody, controlling, and prone to angry outbursts, traits consistent with the psychological profile built over the years. It was chilling to realize that a man trained to uphold the law had spent years terrorizing innocent people, often using his police knowledge to evade capture. Justice at last. In June 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping, as part of a plea deal that spared him the death penalty, but required him to admit to numerous other uncharged crimes, including over 50 rapes. In August 2020, he was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing, survivors and victims' families finally confronted him in court, breaking decades of silence. DeAngelo, then in his 70s, muttered a quiet apology. "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." Legacy. The Golden State Killer case has become a landmark in both criminal justice and forensic science. It showcased the power of DNA and genealogy in solving cold cases and inspired similar investigations worldwide. It also served as a reminder of the resilience of survivors and the relentless pursuit of justice, even when decades pass. Conclusion. The story of Joseph James DeAngelo is one of horror, patience, and eventual justice. For years, he lived among his neighbors as a husband, father, and mechanic, concealing the truth of his monstrous double life. But in the end, science and perseverance exposed him. The Golden State Killer's capture stands as one of the greatest achievements in modern criminal investigation, proof that no matter how long it takes, the truth can be found.